I think the Bible would say the worst thing that you can imagine is God allowing you to go down the path of the flesh as far as you can go, and then him just saying, okay, you can go all the way, and you just finally succumb to it. Yeah, so there's a few different views within theology on hell. And I would encourage your listeners to read and think and explore each of them whilst also reading the scriptures. Because at the end of the day, scripture has to take precedent. It is the supreme authority within the Christian worldview. And so here are the four different views. One is universalism. So this would say that, I don't know, whatever we think about hell now in your imagination, that God in the end will save every single person. And hell would just be for the Satan and his demons. View number two is annihilationism. And that means that souls after death that still do not want to have a relationship with God, though God continues to be very open to that relationship with them, will be snuffed out. So there won't be an eternal consciousness for those who reject God. View number three is eternal conscious torture. And this is probably what's coming to mind for most people when they think about hell. So this will be, your Dante's Inferno, or if you watch cartoons and you see a devil in red clothing with a pitchfork, people are literally being tortured for the rest of eternity. You can think of even the movie with Keanu Reeves, Constantine, like that sort of jam. And then number four, the final one, is eternal conscious torment. And this is actually where I think I find myself on the whole spectrum, which is, and it's torment, not torture. That's an important distinction. Torture is external. Torment is internal. And so people like C.S. Lewis write brilliantly on this, like in the Great Divorce, for example, that what hell is a cage that is locked from the inside. And God doesn't want you to go to hell, but God's given you free will. And if you choose during your entire life to take the path that does not lead to God, but to your own autonomy, to your own sort of making an idol out of yourself or something out of this world, that you are taking this path towards away from the presence of God. And so, like, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that you're slowly becoming more wanting to be your own God. You don't want to have a relationship with him. And so if you think about this, Andreas, like, I think this makes a lot of sense, at least how I think, and I'm open to being proven wrong, is that when we're thinking about hell, this is, as C.S. Lewis would say, a monument to human freedom. If you didn't want to go to heaven and be in a relationship with God, the late Christopher Hitchens said that would be hell for him, to be forced into heaven. He just doesn't want to be there. And so it seems like God, like, what is God to do? Well, God has to make some space for people that don't want a relationship with him. And that seems to be what hell is. The space where people who don't want God are relocated. Now, that might sound like I'm trying to soften it a bit. I don't think it's a good place to be. I'll say it for the following reason. With God's presence comes lots of different attributes. So you'll get things like light and joy and pleasure, as the psalmist says, pleasure forevermore. So those things come along with the presence of God. But if you're put into this place because you don't want a relationship with God, and therefore there is no presence of God there, whatever that means, then I think at the very least it means that you don't get those things that come with God. God's a package deal. And so I think you would be inhabiting a space like Jesus says in the scriptures and other New Testament writers when they're talking about hell, is a place that is devoid of light and devoid of joy and devoid of pleasure and all of these sorts of things. Jesus uses a lot of metaphorical language when talking about hell in the New Testament. Fun fact, Jesus talks more about hell than any other person in the Bible. And this is not a place that you want to go. The metaphors are striving to describe a place that is worse than anything that you can imagine. And I think the Bible would say the worst thing that you can imagine is God allowing you to go down the path of the flesh as far as you can go, and then him just saying, okay, you can go all the way, and you just finally succumb to it. It's sort of like this. This is the last thing. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, Gollum he's one of the main characters. You know, there's Gollum, and then there's like Frodo from the Shire. Yeah. And well, actually, it would be Bilbo Baggins. So this is the Hobbit. So in the Hobbit, you have Bilbo Baggins and you have Gollum. They're both this species called Hobbit, these little people. Okay. One, Gollum, comes across this ring of power, and it just corrupts him. He just gives into this thing. And what does that mean? Well, he just indulges nonstop this ring. And this ring has this symbolism of sin and so on. Whereas the hobbits, you know, let's say for argument's sake, they just remain pure. It seems like Gollum indulging himself is the thing that destroys him. And now he's beyond any sort of recognition of being a hobbit. And I think that's similar to hell, is that it's eternal conscious torment is the position I land on. And eventually, if you resist God your entire life and then pass away, God takes away his hand of trying to fight to get you back onto the good path of the true and the good and the beautiful. And you just become that thing like a Gollum that you're just indulging yourself in and your flesh. And it's a miserable, miserable state of affair. And God doesn't want that for you because he deeply, deeply loves you and wants you to be on the path of the good and the true and the beautiful.